it is my real pleasure to introduce Katharine Schwab. She is the Deputy Editor of the Technology section at Fast Company.
Thanks so much, Alice. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm really excited to be joined here today by the creators of two fascinating search engines that are not Google. One, Sridhar Ramaswamy, the CEO and co-founder of Neeva, and Christian Kroll, the founder and CEO of Ecosia. So I'm going to ask both of you to tell us briefly about yourselves and what your search engine does. And just for everyone in the audience, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. So please drop your comments and questions into the chat, and we will get to them at the end. So I will hand it over to Sridhar to tell us a little bit about you, Neeva, and what you're up to.
Thank you, Katharine. It's great to be here. My name is Sridhar Ramaswamy, and I was a longtime Googler. I worked on ads for more than 15 years at Google, ran the ads team for close to 5 years. I left about 2 years ago, primarily because I wanted to do something. And as my co-founder and I were thinking about what we wanted to do, we decided that we actually wanted to work on search. We love the problem. It's helping people find what they're looking for, whether it's the coffee shop next to you or why you have this weird headache. It's a really personal, important function. It's our window to the world. And we wanted to create a search engine that served you, the user and customer, because we felt that with the ad-supported model, Google and other commercial search engines were increasingly about the advertiser. The advertiser is the customer for these search engines. So we started Neeva as an ads-free private search engine that was going to be based on customer subscriptions, creating a business model that we think will be strongly aligned with sort of creating long-term value for you, creating great results each and every time that you search. We're about 2 years old and hoping to be widely available in the US in the next few weeks. So it's been an exciting journey.
Great, thanks, Sridhar. Christian, over to you.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Christian. I started Ecosia, the search engine that plants trees, I think 12 years ago by now, so quite a while ago. And the reason why I launched the company back then was that after studying, I did a bigger trip around the world. I saw that our planet is not in good shape and I wanted to do something about it. And previously I had a small business where I was one of Sridhar's customers, basically. So basically investing a lot of money into Google ads. And I realized what a great business model this basically is. So I realized how interesting search is, not only from a financial perspective as a business model, but also how much impact you really can have on society with search. So that's why I was super interested in that space. I wanted to help repair much of the damage that we have on our planet. I wanted to help solve climate change. And that's why I started Ecosia, the search engine that plants trees. We're about 90 people now and have planted, I think, 127 million trees so far, adding 1 tree every second.
Wow, that's a lot of trees. Great. Well, it's wonderful to put you two next to each other because we have two different search engines that have kind of different underlying goals. Sridhar, what problem would you say are you trying to solve with Neeva, and how did your experience at Google inform your decision to?
The core problem we are solving is very simple. Search is our gateway to information. As I said, it is a function that comes up very, very often, in news, local queries, stocks, some place that you want to travel to. It's literally our window to the world. It's also kind of a reflection of who we are, what we search, and what we consume. And we saw clearly, and Google showed it, that there is great value across the world in creating a product that helped people find what they were looking for. But we wanted to start over on this problem because we just felt that ad-supported, especially with ads on top, meant eventually that advertisers were your customers and not users. And so we started out with, hey, let's create a subscription search engine. It is the best alignment. Our team is 60 people, but the entirety of our team works on making the search product better, not on what ads or advertisers we should bring in. We just think it's going to be a superior model in the long term. And creating a search engine is hard. Google's been at it for 20 years, Ecosia for 10 years. So we're taking a measured approach to it. We have an amazing team, people that literally ran search. Udi Manber, who was the head of Google search, and a fabled computer scientist is part of the team, as is Darren Fisher, one of the early architects of Google Chrome. We have a team that's united in this mission to reimagine what search is going to be. And the problem is very simple. Anytime you want to type something into the browser bar, we want to be your search engine. We want to be that alternative where you can look at our results and go, yes, I'm getting the best results that I had in mind.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So Christian, you talked about how climate change really motivated you to start a search engine, which is a kind of a confusing trajectory. Why did you want to use search to help solve climate change?
Yeah, so, well, I think first of all, because I saw how much money I was spending on search with my previous business, and I saw how profitable that is. So I didn't have a lot of options to choose from. I thought this is a great point to start at least, and it was, I think, a lucky choice. But afterwards, now that I'm on it for around 10 years or 12 years almost, I realize that there is another part in addition to just the money-making part. So Google is making a lot of money. That's great. We can use the profits that we're making for tree planting. That's also great. But in addition to that, we also want to use search to actually influence our users' behavior to some extent. So whatever you search for, there's always some bias, and even Google's bias, if they say they just present whatever is most relevant to the users, that is a bias too. So and what we want to do is that we want to help our users to make more climate-friendly choices. So let's say you're looking for buying a flight ticket from Berlin, where I'm based at the moment, to Munich, and you type that into Ecosia, so we could tell our users that they could take the train instead, and actually would even save money and a lot of CO2. So we can use the power of search to influence our users' decisions, or at least make it transparent what kind of consequence one decision has over another. And I think that is, I mean, power is, or the power of search, I think, is difficult to be underestimated, because so many people are getting their information from that, and so many people are basing their decision on that. And if we can, in a nice way, nudge people to become more climate friendly through search, and in addition to that, make a lot of profit so that we can plant a lot of trees, that I think would be a great achievement.
Katharine, I just want to add on a small thing to what Christian is saying. Like a deeper economic motivation for Neeva is that I think both advertising and tech have managed to create these giant monopolies, which are making incredible amounts of money. At some level, it's okay that companies make money, but the fact of the matter is that in search, for example, Google doesn't really spend more money today than they did 10 years ago, but they make 4 times as much revenue. Our kind of underlying philosophy is that we want to create a high value product that is affordable to everybody, because we think ultimately you, the customer, and the people of the world should be the ones that make decisions about how to spend money, not like rich tech companies and their billionaire founders, deciding out of the goodness of their heart that they need to contribute a bit to charity. So, at a deeper economic level, Neeva is about technology truly serving society, as opposed to, a few monopolies making up all the excess value that's created by society.
Well, I want to dig into antitrust for sure in this conversation, because I think it's really relevant, and I want to get to that in a little bit. But we should talk about Google, because it's kind of the elephant in the room anytime you talk about search. It's already come up a lot. Sridhar, what has it been like having left Google to now be competing directly with Google? And Christian, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, at one level, actually at many levels, I have a lot of respect for Google. I work with amazing people, got amazing opportunities, and it's created products that benefit lots and lots of people. I see Neeva as a complement to an important function. The fact of the matter is that search is a $150 billion business across a few companies. And there is one company, Google, that has over 90% market share. I honestly don't think that is good for all of us, and I don't think it's good for Google. At one level, I think of Neeva as less as competing with Google, but as offering an important alternate viewpoint to how search should work. I tell people that I'm actually pretty happy that there's so much competition in streaming video because there is real choice. The fact of the matter is that there's very little real choice in search. And we saw dramatically what this can do when individual tech companies can decide that they can withhold services for sovereign nations, like what happened in Australia. So I think of Neeva as actually performing a really important function of offering an alternate point of view, an alternate business model, and ultimately a better product. And on that, while we started on existing technology, we are also busy rebuilding our own stack because we think having that independence is what is going to let us present, as I said, this alternate viewpoint on how this very important function of search should work. I have an excellent relationship. I obviously literally work with thousands of people. My team was over 10,000 people at Google. I have many great relationships with many of them, but some of them are clearly torn. But I see myself as having a larger loyalty to sort of my country and society rather than to a specific company. And if some people think of this as I'm competing with my former employer, my attitude is like, so be it. It's okay to change your mind about important topics.
Yeah, Christian, how do you think about Ecosia's role in the kind of search competition?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, I think in search, it's important to have competition and just different options. I think it's super important for democracy. I mean, here in Germany, Google has, I think, 97 or 98% market share on mobile. And that's not good. Like even Google, so I have a few reservations about Google, but probably Google isn't an evil company, but even a great company shouldn't have that much market share. I think that's dangerous for society. And so I think there should be a lot of different options that users can pick from. I think we have a few USPs that Google doesn't have, and that's why we are basically attracting a lot of users from Google. And that also forces, so in an ideal market with competition, that should force Google to improve its offering too. So we of course are very passionate about solving climate change, and there's a lot more that Google could be doing about climate change. So at the moment they're, I would say, doing the bare minimum in many regards. So maybe if we win more market share, then Google also has to do more. That would be awesome. So this is how competition usually should work like. But unfortunately, we are not yet at a level where there is real competition. So I think in an ideal world, there should be 5, 6, 7 players that more or less have equal market share, and then you really get good services that really have the benefit of the customer in mind. At the moment, we're not in a situation like this. And Google is doing a very, very good job at defending this monopoly position. And that makes it hard for new or smaller players to actually win some market share.
Well, I think that's a good transition to talk a little bit about antitrust. So antitrust lawsuits are now really starting to pick up in the US more. They have been in Europe for years now. Do you think that kind of governmental action is necessary for startups of your size to compete?
I think it's important for us, as a startup to understand that antitrust lawsuits take a lot of time. But the increase in scrutiny, we are talking 10 years sometimes, like with the judgments and appeals and so on. But what this has clearly done is it has increased the awareness of the power that various tech companies have, and people are more open to choice as a result of it. I joke to people that the 2020s are going to be the decade where tech will be spoken of in the same sentence, as like oil and petroleum. As yes, they clearly did great things for society, but they also came with consequences. And on antitrust itself, I think the fact of the matter is that thanks to voodoo economics, antitrust has been asleep in the US for over 50 years. I think this is a long overdue correction. Just to give you a simple example, Katharine, I think the FTC has less than 1,000 full-time employees to kind of police all the tech and communications company within the United States. That's a joke. That's just not going to happen. So I think the increased attention is important. I think massive concentrations of power in companies which primarily have profit and their shareholders as a goal is just wrong. As I said, I want to rely on us as citizens and our government to create policy for us and make sure that we are going green, and not kind of, it's great that tech companies, also are paying attention to it. But I believe in competition and great products for everybody to use. And I personally think that the antitrust action in tech and beyond is just long, long overdue in the United States.
Yeah, I definitely agree that so it's long overdue, and we've also, we've been flagging that for a very long time. So we've been patient for a very long time. We see some action happening now, and there were also some at least small victories that are now happening. So I don't know, some of you might have seen that recently Google had to update the mechanism behind their choice screen, which was previously an auction model. So they turned a regulation that they the European Commission basically asked them to do, turned that into a business model, which we thought wasn't fair. And we, of course, made that very, very clear. But unfortunately, it took 2 years then to correct that. And during that 2 years, one of our competitors here in Germany who were working on building their own index, they went bankrupt basically because they didn't get the visibility. And that is a big, big problem for small companies, for new entrants. Other companies are also having problems, of course. And I think, Ecosia could be maybe 10 times bigger if we had fair entry to all of those platforms. Because the problem really is that Google owns 2/3 of the internet entrance platforms, or the entrances to the internet with Chrome and Android. That makes it very hard to enter there. And then the rest, Google just buys that, the other tickets basically. So Safari, Google is the default search option. And of course, small companies can't afford that. And basically Google then controls 100% of the internet. And they say, yes, it's so easy to switch to another search engine, but they are very well aware that nobody is doing that. And that makes it very, very difficult for a new player. And we have now 15 million monthly active users. That's a lot. We are even the biggest European search engine. European based. We only have around 1% market share in Europe, but still the biggest player that's actually coming from Europe. But that is still not a lot if you compare it to the big players. And I think we could be in a much better situation if those entry points would be regulated. And I think not only that there needs to be some kind of a fair choice screen now, not only on Android, but probably also on Chrome and maybe also in all the other platforms. But I think also there needs to be some repairing of the damage that has been done. So Google kind of has very successfully improved its market share, kind of manifested its position through those mechanisms. And I personally, I'm not a lawyer, but I personally feel that they should also undo some of that damage by giving their competitors a little bit more visibility, by really allowing the user to make a choice. We know that a lot of users who see Ecosia, hear it for the first time and kind of understand what it's about, they would love to pick it. But nobody really sees us because it's always Google as a default.
Yeah, well, so let's talk a little bit more about the default problem. So you mentioned the fair choice screen, and just to explain a little bit about what you're referencing, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about when you first download a browser or on your phone, the default search engine is just what's there, and there's no way for you to choose something else right at the beginning, versus you could probably go into your settings and change something, but that's a much bigger barrier to entry. So because of this default problem and how this has helped Google become so dominant, how do you address this issue as a small search engine, knowing that maybe regulation is still far away?
For us, we have to convince users to go through all the pain of changing their search engine. That's so we put a lot of effort into marketing, branding. Our users support us with a lot of word of mouth. But that's still, as I said, I think we could be much, much bigger if that problem wasn't there. And I think also for Neeva building a great product, is one thing, but then acquiring users, that's also the other thing. That's a very difficult challenge. So it's not easy, and I wish it was more easy.
Yeah, I mean, Christian has been and Ecosia have been at this for 10 years, and that's a long time. They have worked hard enough that they have default spots on most of the major browsers. That's very much an open struggle for us. In browsers like Chrome, for example, we can make an extension that changes search, but Chrome will promptly throw up a warning asking people if they really wanted to switch, even though we are clear that Neeva is a search engine. Even things like that UI are designed in such a way to strongly encourage people to go back to their original search engine. In areas like Safari, we're still doing the work of even being an option for search. You cannot set Neeva as your default search on Safari. So those problems are definitely issues that we face. And to a certain extent, I think that raises the bar for how good we have to be as a search engine. I use these as motivational elements for my team for why just being this good enough is just not going to work, and why we need to be truly superior. It is daunting, but we are driven by this belief that a better product will gain market share, but we clearly have to work at it. And things like the DOJ lawsuit in the US, it goes to the heart of this default setting arrangement that Google has with many players. Hopefully, again, will create a window of opportunity for us.
Great, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about privacy too, because I think that's also one maybe downstream consequence of monopolies that there's no option but to have Google track you all over the internet, especially if they own so many of these gateways. So Christian, I know Ecosia is obviously mostly focused on climate change and the environmental impact, but you've also included privacy as a perk of the search engine. Why did you make that decision?
Yeah, sometimes people forget that about us because it says we're the search engine that plants trees, and there's not so much more space to add additional descriptions, but we're also very much focused on privacy, and are of course much better than all the big players, but actually as good as many as the privacy focused search engines are. So we just don't have enough time or space to communicate that. And the reason why we decided to do this was, I think, mostly internal beliefs, like what we believed is best for the users, what our team believes a search engine should do. So we could probably earn a bit more money if we sold all of our users' data to advertisers, but we decided not to do that because we know that this is not in our users' interest. And fortunately, since we're not a profit maximizing company, but basically a non-profit business, we can make those kind of decisions. It just feels much more honest, I would say, because users who use Google or just generally services on the internet, they don't understand what's happening in the background. And if you talk to users and ask them what they think is happening, then they think that they're safe to some extent, or their data is safe, but this is not what's happening when you're using most services. And we, as a search engine, also want to make sure that kind of this expectation is actually met, that we're not doing any shady things in the background. And that's why we decided to go this privacy-friendly route.
Yeah, on our side, Katharine, I guess.
That also then.
Sorry, go ahead, please. Please go ahead.
I was going to just ask a follow-up on that, Christian. I know you also publish your financial reports online. Does that kind of tie into the same kind of transparency with users?
Yes, so I think ultimately people use us because they like our team so much or something like that, but it's because they want to support solving climate change. And that we need to make it very credible that we're actually doing that. For me, it was, when I started the company, it was very important that we're not planting trees to make money, but actually are making money to plant trees, so the other way around. And publishing our financial statements, I think, is just a consequence of that. So we want to make it very transparent where all the money is going. We want our users to hold us accountable. If we should be spending too much on marketing or some kind of technology investments, they could write us an email and ask us why we're doing that. And ultimately, we also want to make it visible that if you want to build a search engine, you have costs. I think, especially in the beginning, there were some users that were rather critical and said, you need to give all of your money away for tree planting, like all your revenue. And in the beginning, I even did that. That was not a very good business idea because it wasn't very sustainable. But yeah, so it's expensive to build all those products, and I think the best thing we can do is to just make our financials visible to users. I think that creates a lot of trust. I think also we had a lot of journalists who ask us very detailed questions about when you gave, for example, when you spent, I don't know, 200,000 euros on marketing that month, like why was that, and why was it only 100,000 the month before? So those are kind of questions. I think it's good to have them, and I think that's ultimately what we want to achieve. Also, is kind of a transformation of the business world. I think more businesses could theoretically do that. There's no reason, there's no regulation that keeps you from doing it.
Yeah, for sure. So Sridhar, with Neeva, how does privacy and that trust that comes with privacy play into your pitch to consumers to try out Neeva?
Yeah, I think what we all have to understand is that words like privacy and personalization have been, again, hijacked by the advertising industry. We need to remember that the core of online ads consists of all kinds of people trying to keep track of what you did. So there is a rampant loss of any sense of privacy. To us, privacy roughly means what you do is your business. If you interact with some site, yes, the site knows that you interacted with it, but nothing else. We want to make sure that we define this very clearly, and that's the promise that Neeva lives by. And it comes directly from the model. We are embarking on a model in which only our customers pay us. In turn, this lets us have a really simple business model where we say the product serves you, the company serves you, we protect your data. Of course, we protect your privacy because you're already paying us. Things like ads-free and private are a consequence of Neeva being a subscription search engine and creating a product that works just for you. And we also do things similar to, for example, what Apple does. We distribute an extension that tries very hard and successfully to prevent tracking so that companies are not keeping track of everything that you're doing. So we extend our ideas of privacy to beyond Neeva as well. We are not an anti-ads company. We think advertising is fine, but advertising tied to rampant tracking is not okay. But it's the core of the business model, being customer paid, having a subscription relationship that lets us create a worry-free, you-first product. It comes very naturally.
Great, yeah. So I just want to remind our audience that you are welcome to ask any questions. We're going to keep chatting, but please drop your questions in the chat. Christian, I know that you've talked about how Ecosia, I think you said a nonprofit business, which is kind of an antithetical idea. Do you think that this kind of model could or provide a model for other companies to do more climate-friendly work?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, as I said in the beginning, it was very important that I started Ecosia not because I wanted to get rich, but really because I wanted to maximize my contribution to solving climate change and bringing more justice to the world. And again, a consequence of that original idea was basically to also make sure that it's impossible to take any profits out of the company. So we made that legally binding that so we're still a business. We have to make profit, of course, but the profit has to stay within the company and ultimately serve the purpose of basically solving climate change and bringing justice to the world. And so that element is super important for me. And then the other element, especially if you look at search, is independence. So we want to make sure that also we actually made that legally binding, that it's impossible for anybody to ever buy Ecosia. So even if Microsoft or Google came tomorrow, put billions of dollars on the table, it would not be possible to sell. So it's what we see it as a steward-owned company, or also the kind of if you look at the legal setup, it's basically a steward-owned company, which means only employees can basically control the company. It's not possible for anybody outside of the company to take control. And I think that is, that's important, especially if you're in the area of search, because otherwise you will always have some external influence, be it profit maximization or be it strategic interests of an external company that just bought you, that will influence probably the search results that you're showing. And I think that's not good. Ultimately, a search engine should serve its users. And I think with our setup, we can guarantee that. So I think in our setup, it makes total sense. But I also see a lot of companies, especially here in Berlin, that are following this model. So this model of steward-owned companies, we call it the purpose movement. There are now dozens or hundreds of companies who are basically doing the same, who are following the same setup. And I find this super interesting because for me, this is kind of the opposite of what we're doing with shareholder value maximization. And I think society needs an opposite to that, because the optimum is maybe somewhere in the middle. Yes, you need a business that generates money, that wants to grow, that wants to scale, and so on, but for the sake of improving society, not for kind of its own sake. I think we've seen in the last decades a lot of shareholder value, a lot of bad things that are consequences of shareholder value maximization. Some of those can be felt in the internet, but also some of those can be felt on our planet. Destruction of our climate, of ecosystems, bad treatment of a lot of people on our planet. I think a lot of those things are consequences of shareholder value maximization, and we want to make sure that this doesn't happen. So this is basically my contribution to trying to fix or improve capitalism. And yeah, for me, that was, of course, a big decision, because it also means that I'm never going to be a billionaire and have a fancy yacht. But for me, that's not important.
Well, I want to ask Sridhar, in terms of this idea of not maximizing shareholder value, I mean, you are kind of building a more traditional startup with venture capitalists who I'm assuming are demanding some kind of return at some point. How do you think about, still building a company that has kind of this mission and this purpose, like you described, while balancing those competing needs?
Clearly, we have a belief that creating a successful business is not in conflict with creating customer, employee, as well as shareholder value. I think this is where having clear principles enunciated clearly at the beginning make a big difference. There were lots of people that tried to advise us early on to not let go of options, to not come out very explicitly, very openly and say, we will never show ads on Neeva. We will never show affiliate links on Neeva. We will never sort of, package your data and sell it to other people. So much so that these have become sort of operating principles for the company. Most of our folks would quit if we were to change one of these core principles. But within that, we are able to attract amazing folks to work in the team because, as I said, we also think we can create a successful business. And if you look back on other industries, ad-supported industries especially, that have gotten disrupted, it's Netflix and HBO disrupting traditional broadcast TV or even cable TV. And another example is not quite ad-supported, it's an episodic business, or things like Costco and Amazon Prime disrupting Walmart and Target. They created better customer experiences and used that to create better companies. I recognize what Christian is saying, and I applaud him, and I respect what he and the company are doing. But the fact of the matter is, like, we're also in the Valley, and every Neeva employee, is literally trading off what he or she can make at a Google or at one of the other big tech companies. And we want to make sure that they feel like they see upside. And we've been able to attract a great team that is driven by a combination of doing right while also doing good. Yes, our investors want a return, but they also understand that this is an immensely capable team that is very focused on building a business. Like I said, our hope is that this does not have to be an either-or.
Great. Well, we have an audience question that I think might be a great note to end on. How can Neeva, Ecosia, and other smaller search engines work together actively and in public to better serve society through collectively reducing the dominance of Google? Who wants to take that first?
I think this is a great question. I'm glad I got to meet Christian through CogX. We'll definitely stay in touch. I think the more we can get the word out that there are real options of quality search engines that are out there, the better we will be. And clearly, working with the likes of Duck and others is also going to be important. I think it's a great question. I definitely feel like there is a lot more that we can do to support each other.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think, we can highlight that it's important to have choice, but ultimately it's also important that users basically make the choice. Everybody can also contribute to making the search space a bit more fair by switching their search engine, at least giving it a try. We are also, other than Google, we are not obsessed with 100% market share. We're fine with just having some of your searches. And I think that's that's true for Neeva as well. So everybody should try out.
Share, in search for us makes us, especially as a subscription company, a very powerful and influential voice, and it clearly lays the foundation for future growth. So I think this is an area where more competition will honestly even make Google search better. I used to run, AdWords, which was the dominant advertising platform circa 2008. And every time we had strong competition, it always forced my team to up their game on the product that they delivered and the value that their customers got. So I really think of competition as being a good thing for everybody involved.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question directed at Christian from Steven Zimmerman, who asks, you mentioned promotion of more environmentally friendly purchases. There's a conflict with this goal in your revenue model. How can you address this conflict without alienating advertisers?
Yeah, I think there the fact that we're not a profit maximizing business comes in really handy, because we can do whatever we think is right. And we can look at our mission, which is solving climate change, and we can basically then look at the trade-off in terms of how much CO2 does one or the other thing either reduce or prevent. Often we've made the choice that we don't promote kind of the just making more revenue. Even so, we're about to or thinking about launching a shopping vertical as well on Ecosia, and there, of course, the question comes up like, should we really promote excessive online shopping because it's not good for our planet? And we decided, no, we shouldn't do that. We should have a huge banner that says, don't buy stuff that you don't need. Even if we would make money with it, it's not good for our planet. And I think it's great that we're in a situation where we can afford doing something like that.
And some of the biggest feature asks from our early Neeva members, Katharine, has been for things like not seeing big retailers when they search for a product. And when people want to look for clothing, they want us to only show stores that ethically source their materials. We do think that if there is an ad block right on top and the one with the biggest paycheck wins, it is going to be a pretty tough conflict. So we really think of Neeva as being able to better serve you and what you need. And to Christian's point, I'll echo that again. Everybody goes, oh, remarketing, why is it so bad if you ads, chase you around? But we all need to remember that our attention is actually a remarkably finite resource. And what those ads make you do is actually they make you buy things that you don't actually need. And it's important to understand that these things have economic consequences. Having a space in your brain actually makes you do stuff. This is why people pay so much to get in front of presidents and senators. And I think clean models really help truly serve customers.
Great. Well, I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you both so much for your time. It's been such a fascinating conversation.